So let us start with strict literal expression. So this strict is not a statement basically. So this is an expression used as a literal. So this is either actually used in a global to the complete JS file, or you can actually use this at a specific function unit, right? So there is a special significance we have for strict literal basically, and it is applicable for all browsers, right? Um, and from the versions 1.8.5 only. The previous versions doesn't support strict um, literal basically. So when I say browsers, latest browsers, you'll have IE 10 plus, right? You'll have Firefox again 4 plus, fourth version plus, and Chrome anyways it's 13 plus, right? So these are the versions which normally they will support they have got the interpreter, right, upgraded, so which can understand what is strict. So the main purpose of strict is it will make execution and all the declarations of JavaScript code in a strict mode, right? For example, let's see an example here. So let us say here we have actually created yesterday the variable subtypes now, right? So when I run this, so for example, if I remove this I, right? So let's remove this fetch also, right? So yes guys, yesterday we had small correction on yesterday's class. So we have defined two things, if you remember. One on square braces. Let me define one more, where for example p is equal to, so we always define arrays in a square braces, right? So for example I'm defining in this way, right? And the object we define in flower brackets with a property and the value. We'll come to this understanding of objects and arrays anyways more specifically, right? Now, so here, so we have defined some variables which for which we haven't mentioned where, right? But still, if you run this program, it will see the type of we have used the variable I to get the type. Similarly, we use the variable h to get the type, right? So let's see. So here you can see we still are getting the types here, actual number and the boolean. So here, so anyways JavaScript will actually accept it. But right, whenever you use a literal called use strict, right, this literal whenever you use, and let's say if I'm running it, right, so it will enforce you to actually take the action. So let's say this is your use strict. You have right click and say view in browser. Maybe it is not getting applied here. This literal, let me open it in browser again. Okay, so when you use a strict, right, it will actually give you to an error to define the variable, right? It will actually give you, it will enforce you, or it will throw an error to actually define, saying that variables should be used, variable method or variable type should be used to actually define your any variables as such. So that it will enforce you to use. So for example, let me say so strict, right click and say view browser. So it's case history here, my mistake here, right? So here you can see when I say use strict, obviously JavaScript, right, is completely case sensitive mode, right? So there was my caps lock on. So here you can see it says variable undefined in strict mode, right? Meaning, so whenever you define, right, anything, right? So now we have defined strict mode in global. So when I say global, meaning, so I've defined it at the top of all the scripts. So now if I define any methods or anything at any point of time, it will enforce me to define, right? So let me stop here. For example, I'm going to create one more script. Let's say, let me show you script. For example, here you have defined where, right? So, and also you have defined where here, right? So now we have defined all the variables as such. So now when I run it, you'll see now we have actually done a clean programming to actually get all the details as such. So now it will allow us to run the program. So this is something which is global. So now when I'm talking about global, so for example, I have a function here. For example, met1 method 1 open and close bracket. So here let's say I'm going to say something, some j is equal to 12, right? And I'll say document dot write of j, right? So this is a function. So now let's run this program. So for now, so when I'm calling this use strict, right, I'm not calling this function from anywhere. So let's call this function. So let me create one more script here, and let me call met1, so that I'm calling met1 so that this function will be triggered and it will automatically start executing these lines. So when I run it, right, so now have we defined anywhere j? So we haven't defined anywhere j, but we're calling this method, right, and we're using use strict. So this should actually give the error saying your variable cannot be defined, right? So now use strict, you can define either global or you can define at function level. So when I say we can define at function level, meaning, so when you define at function level, this will cause error, right, directly when you are actually using this calling this function only. So when I run this program, you'll see, right, it will give you error wherever you're using actually strict mode, right? So as we are using strict mode only, here you can see all the other statements will get executed and it will give me error only at the place of strict. So here when I remove this method, for example, I'm not calling any methods here. So at the end of the day, when I am executing this HTML file, right, I'm not calling my method met1. Let's understand how it works. When I run this, you'll see it will give me output, because whenever execution is happening, it will apply strict mode. But as this function is not getting executed, so there is no strict mode being applied here, right? So this is how we normally create the strict modes. So basically strict mode is actually created to actually secure the declarations, right? And it actually makes all the code whatever you're writing, right, in mainly in JavaScript, to be secure. And definitely it will help us to actually avoid any bad syntax or any runtime errors, say for saying that it is undefined and so for example, if I don't use this, let's say use strict, right, when I run this program, right, you'll see, right, okay, I'm not calling this method. Let me call this method and let me refresh this page, right? It will give me this j, for example. But if I don't define this, right, I'm not declaring this j, for example, when I run it, it will give me, see, error. Now this is some, see, where I didn't define any value for it, j, right, and I haven't defined this variable j as a variable as I wanted, right? So um, and also it will give me, if you try to use consume the variable, it will give you the runtime error. So this is the reason it's always important to make sure that we are actually creating variable. Right? The best practice, or you can actually use a strict mode to enforce, right, that you are actually calling. So this is how right, it is actually created. So the strict mode, right, will actually enforce you to write a clean program with all the declarations you have, right? So this is your local strict mode you have defined, and similarly you can define your global strict mode. So global strict mode applies to each and every line of code you're actually writing up, and local will apply only to the main function you're actually writing, right? So it will actually give you the complete proof for your codes you're actually writing. So that's how we normally define the strict mode. Use strict, and this is a case sensitive. It should always be in a lowercase. Fine. So this is our strict mode. Now the next one, operators. So very important, right? Let us understand what are different JavaScript operators we have, right? We have very useful operators we have. So let's see the division. So the first one is arithmetic operator, right? And then we have assignment operators, right? And then you have logical operators, right? We have comparison, right, operators, and we have conditional operators, right? So these are different operators we have. Division. So arithmetic operators we have, and the arithmetic operators we have plus, you have minus, you have multiply, which is asterisk, you have divided by, and you have mod. So these are arithmetic operators we have. So let's understand this. Anyways, these get applied to the as per the operator you're actually using in between number type or object types, right? So let's create a new file here to quickly check the operators. HTML file. So let me save it. So let me save it to saying operator sample.html, right? So here let me take a script, right? So here, for example, I'm going to take where I is equal to 10 and where j is equal to, for example, 5, right? So here, when I say document dot write of I plus j, right? So meaning automatically, as we know that whenever you define any variables, right, automatically it will actually consider, right, the type of data you have defined. It will behave in that way, right? So now when I run this program, you will see plus is an arithmetic operator we have, right, to sum, right? So this sum, anyways, we have seen. Let's, for example, if I further add some numbers, let's say, right? So we can actually sum up the let's see. So similarly, so we have already seen, for example, if something is string in between for plus, then automatically it will actually consider till plus, it will sum up, and from wherever it starts string, it will consider all others as a string concatenates. That's how is defined. So this is your arithmetic operator plus. Similarly, we have document.write, for example, now I into j. So multiplication, so it will multiply both, right? So let me just comment this up so that, right, 50. Similarly, for example, let me take minus. So I minus j, it will subtract the values. So for example, if you are doing j minus I, right? So when I run it, it will give you the true value return. J minus I will give you the minus of psi. Similarly, you have divided by. For example, if I have I divided by j, right, it will give me the result of the division, which is 2. Right? For example, I'm going to take 6 for example, right? So when I run this, it will give me result saying, right, the actual result you have, right? Similarly, when I take modulo, this is modulus is something which will give me remainder. So when 10 is divided by 6, remainder will be 4. If you want to get remainder, you can use your modulus operator. Modulo, modulus, operator, normally called arithmetic operator. So these are the different arithmetic operators we have in JavaScript. Going to the next one, assignment operator. So what are assignment operators? You have is equal to, you have plus is equal to, you have minus is equal to, you have same, you have divided by is equal to, and you have a percentage is equal to, right? So now is equal to is nothing but where we are actually assigning a value. So this will get assigned. So for example, when I say, let me just comment it. For example, when I create I or j is equal to I, meaning the value of I am actually assigning it to j. So when you print it, document dot write of j, and when you run it, it will give me the value of. This is how we are actually creating the value. So now let's go ahead one step here. So what is plus is equal to, right? So let's say for example, I want to sum I value, I want to increment the I value with some, for example, 75. So I normally, we do write something called I is equal to I plus 75, right? So so what it does, it will add up the value with 75, right? So when I print the value of I, it will give me the value called 85 as the output, because we are actually summing it. But the same expression, right, you can write in a different way, saying instead of doing the complete step, we can actually just say I plus is equal to 75, because end of the day, what is happening here, I'm doing I plus 75. I'm actually adding the value to itself. So I can call I plus is equal to 75. So now when I run my program, when I see, you'll get the same output. That's your plus is equal to, right? Similarly, you have minus is equal to, which we have uh, we'll get, it is like I minus 75. I is 10 and minus 75 will give you minus 65, right? Similarly, you have division. Similarly, you have your multiplication and modulus. So when you run this, you will see 75 into 10. So that's your assignment operator, where assignment operator will actually assign the value of right hand side to the left hand variable defined. That's how your assignment operator works. Assignment operator. And then you have a logical operator. What are logical operators? So we have logical operators and logical or and logical not, right? So let us see how these can be applied as such. So for example here, right, let's say, let me comment this, let me place this, but let me keep it here, right? So I'll say document dot write of, I'll say two things. So even before logical operator, first let's understand the comparison operator, right? Sometimes you can say comparison, or can also say relational, right? So and then we'll come to the logical, right? So our comparison operators are double equal to, we have triple equal to, we have greater than or equal to, we have less than or equal to, right? So these, and also you have not equal to. So you have equal to, not equal to, triple equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So these are the comparison or relational operators we have in C sharp. So JavaScript, right? So now let's understand how these are applied. Now these are pretty simple. We normally use these to compare two or more entities. So for here I'll say I is equal, double equal to j, for instance. So for example here I'm gonna take 10, right? So when I say I is double equal to j, it means that it will check whether this expression is true or false, and it will return the boolean. So when I right click and say go and check browser, it will give you true, you can see, right? Because the value of I is equal to value of j. Now see the beauty here. If I make j as string, when I run this, you can see it will still give me true, because end of the day it is checking the value and not the type, right? So that's your double equal to. But if you want to check even the type, then you have to make it triple equal to. In JavaScript, we have something called triple equal to, which will check both value and the type. So now when you run it, you will see it false. So this is your equality operator to check value and the type, right? And of course, we have not equal to. So not equal to is something which will check whether it is not, but not equal to will again check your values, where it will give you false, right? Because they are same as such. So but when I give some other value, for example 23, when I run this, so now it will give you true, because they are not equal. Similarly, you have, let's say for example, greater than will actually give you whether I is greater than 10 or not. So it will give you false, because I is not greater, right? Similarly, you have greater than, equal to, less than, and less than equal to. So less than will check, or less than equal to will check whether I is less than or equal. So when I run this program again, it will give you true, because yes, I value, which is 10, is indeed less than your j. So that's your uh, comparison operator. So now let us see logical operators. So logical operators are applied, right, in your in between the multiple comparison operators. Meaning, right? So when we have, let's say for example, comparison operators, right, and you want to compare the final output of your multiple comparisons. So for example, you have, let me take let me comment this, let me take a where, so let me call it as res, some result, right? And I'll say I is greater than 2, for instance, right? And I have one more stuff called, let's say j is less than 50. So here in between these two, I want to compare, I want to apply logical operator in these two. So for logical operator, what we do, we always apply a truth table funda here, right? So we already know, in our primary schooling, right? We know what is a truth table, right? So let's say, for example, you have condition A and condition B, right? And you want to apply logical conditional operator between. Let's say, for example, A logical and B, right? So then what happens? So here, let's say, for example, your A is true and B is true. So when I apply AND operator, right, meaning that both left and right sides of my AND logical AND operator should be true in order to generate a true output. Otherwise, let's say, for example, if A is true and B is false, right, then if at least ones go false, then it will give you the false operator, because AND meaning both. Similarly, you have multiple combinations saying false and true, it will give you again false. Similarly, you have false and both being false, anyways it will give false. This is your complete truth table you have, which means when you are using logical and operator in between multiple conditions. So these conditions are, when I say A, you can take this as A, for example, for instance. When I say B, you can take this as B, and in between I'm applying, for example, AND operator, right? So A and B. So what is A? I greater than 2. Yes, it is true. And J less than 5. What is J? Well, J is 23. So this is true and this is true. What will be the output? Output will be true, because both the conditions are true. Right? So now when you print it, let's say document.write of result, right? And let's run it. You will see true. Right? So this is how logical AND is applied, and it can be applied for any number of conditions. I'll say AND, for example, I is less than J, and you have, for example, J is equal to 23, for example, or I'll say triple equal to 23, for example, right? Which means when I run this program, it will give you true, because each and every condition we have plotted is true. For instance, at least one condition goes wrong, I greater than J, for example, right? Everything else is perfect except this. So now what happens? If at least one condition go wrong, it will give you a complete expression saying that the final return will be false. That's your logical AND operator, right? Similarly, you have OR operator. So let's apply the same stuff to OR, right? OR is pipe symbol, you have AR. So let's understand what exactly it will give. So when I say OR, you can understand the meaning with the word itself. OR meaning either A or B. If one of them is true, then the output will be true. So A true and B true will give you the final true. And again, A is true and B is false. At least one is true, so true. In this, you have false and true. At least one true is there. B condition is true, it will give you true. And here, both are false, right? But for OR, at least you need one true, right? But if both are false, it will give you the final false, right? So let's apply the same here. So for example, here, let me take the same where, let's say res1. So here I'll take I is greater than, so for example, let me take these two itself, right? And I'm going to apply OR condition, which is pipe symbols you have, right? So J is greater than 2 and J is less than 2, both are true. So here, so let me comment this up and print res1 as such. So I want to see only this output, nothing else. So when I run this, you will see true, right? So now you can apply this for any number of conditions. So for example, here I'm saying I greater than j, for instance. So here I greater than j is false, right? 10 is not greater than 23. But I greater than 2 and j less than 50 is true. So end of the day, when you run it, you will get true only. But what if all are false? For example, I is greater than 50 and j is greater than 50 and I is less than 2. So I less than 2 false, j greater than 50 false, and this is again false. So when I run it, now you will get false. So for OR operator, right, you will actually get your false. That's how it is. And the last one is your not. Not is to get the nego value of your condition. Nego value meaning, so for example here, I'll say, for example, I'm printing here not result. When I run it, you will see true. So honestly here, the output is false. I'm saying not false. Not false is true, right? So if I'm getting true here, it will give me false. For example here, let's say I'm going to say I is greater than 2, which means at least one condition is conditional expression is true, so final result will be true. But here what I'm doing, I'm saying not true, which will give you. So this is something which we use for. So same things you can actually use in conditions as such, right? You can actually use it in your conditional statements, which is your control statements as such, right? So which we're going to see in our next topic, right? For example, if conditions or while conditions, wherever you actually want, right? So this is your logical operators and comparison operators. The last one you have is conditional operator. What is conditional operator? It's again question mark and your colon. So this is your conditional operator, not condition, it's conditional operator. Let's see how it is used basically. So here, let me comment this on. For example, here I have where, let's say, I is equal to 100, and let's say where j, I am not defining any value for it. I'm not initializing any value for it. I'll just say if I value is this if condition we're gonna use. So the same is your conditional statement we're actually using, right? So we'll see here, let's say for example, if I is greater than 50, for instance, open and close bracket. So this is called as an if condition, right? So where I'll say j equal to, let's say for example, 1000, else, right, j is equal to 2000, for instance, right? Meaning based on I'm actually defining the value of j. So now here when I run my program, document dot write of j, right, it will give me based on the condition. So here if I is greater than 50, yes, I is 100 greater than 50, so j value should be 1000, and it will skip the remaining part of program, right? Else part will be skipped and then it will give you, right? So this is called as a conditional statement. You have if condition. So this so the syntax being if, and you can have condition here. It's not just one condition, you can have multiple conditions. I would say if I greater than 50, for example, and for example j is not j, I, for example, because we are defining j here, right? I is less than 150, for example, for instance. So here meaning these two should give me true. I greater than 50 and j I less than 150. Yes, it is true. I'm applying AND operator because I need both the conditions to be true. So the j value will be decided. So when I right click and say view in browser, you'll be able to see 1000, because this is how you can actually apply your if conditions. right? Now, the same stuff, right, you can write in one single statement using your conditional operator. How? So here, let's say the same stuff, right? But let me take one expression, or you can take two. That's not a problem. So the same expression, it depends on this expression, for example. At end of the day, what is important? J value is need to be assigned. So this is my main expression. So if this is true, now you will say, okay, this expression, based on this expression, if this is true, then what? Then I want to return 1000. So this 1000 will be assigned to J. Else, for else you have colon. Else you have. That's it. One single line for writing. You have here 4 different statement lines. So here what I am checking, the same expression I am checking, I'll say question mark. Meaning, okay, fine. If this expression is true, then what? Then I'll say return 1000. Else, which is represented by colon, return 2000. Simple as. And this will be assigned to J. For example, let's see. Let's say, for example, I'm going to comment this up, run it. You will see it will give you a message. Right? That's how it is. So here, this is how the conditional operator works. So now again, if you um, improvise your condition, for example, let's say here I'm saying else if, for example, I something is equal to, so for 20, right? The syntax of if, I have if condition here, I have else if here, right? And I'll write one more else, meaning J is equal to, for example, I'll assign some 4000. For example, here let me take one single expression. Let's say I'm going to say J I is less than 50. Now let's look at this if condition very keenly. First condition is I less than 50. Is it true? You can see here. No, it is not true. So it will skip this. It will go to else if. I is equal to 20. Is equal to meaning I'm comparing the values of I and 20. Is it true? No, it is not true. So it will go to the final else. Final else is nothing but your last else you have, where you can, if no condition is true, then the else part will be applied. So now you can see here, let me comment it. So when you say J, right, meaning, so no condition got successfully no condition successful, so it will actually go to the final else and it will assign 4000. So when I run it, you will be able to see 4000 value in J. The same you can apply here too. How? Right? So here we have J. We have one single expression. For example, this one, I less than 50. Let's take it. Let's do it from start. Then what? I less than 50. Right? Okay. If this is true, then what? So then, yes, I can directly say 1000. Else, the actual story begins from here. When I say else, right, else I have one more condition here, which is I is equal to 20. So what I have to do? I have to start one more condition here saying I is equal to 20. Then, right, this is a complete else you are writing. Right, you can see here, I'll start open brace and close brace too. Fine. If I is 20, then what? 2000. So yes, I want to return 2000, or again one more else. Now we have one else. So say 4000. That's it. So conditional operator is pretty simple actually. So now let me comment it out and run. So we'll see the value 4000 again using conditional operator. So this is your conditional operator. Right? So this is how we normally um, use the operators in JavaScript mainly. So here, in between this, right, we have seen one more concept called commenting, right? Even before this, we have something called comment. So comments, we have something called, right? Comments we normally use to make code not executable as such, right? So here, uh, you can see that whatever code you comment, so normally if you don't want certain statement to be executed, then we normally comment it. So when you comment it, so for comment we use something called your double so forward slash. Fine. So when you're actually doing that, right, what will happen, this line of statement or whatever lines you have commented, those lines of those statements will be considered as a dead code, right? So those will be will be considered as dead code, and they will not be considered for execution as such, right? So this is how we normally declare actually comment. So this is a single line. For example, for single line comments we'll say this, and for example if I want to do multi-line, so slash star and again star slash, so which means I have commented multiple lines. So in order to comment single line, we use forward slash. But if you want to comment multiple lines of code, then you can go for forward slash star, and whatever statements you have, select those statements, and after that say star and same as your C sharp or C++. Syntax is same, right? So here you can see, let me uncomment for example. So I want to comment all this slash star and star slash, simple. That's your commented code. Or if you're using Visual Studio for example, right, as I'm using this, I'm just saying you have a shortcut. The shortcut is Control plus K plus C for commenting, or U for uncommenting. So for example here, this is commented. So Control K U uncomment, Control K C comment again. This is how it is used. These are your comments you have. So and comments we normally use for writing up our write up to. For example here I'll say here this, sorry, inside script, right? So I'll say this JS is to understand, right, operators for example. Yeah, this will give you good write up saying okay, so this JS I'm actually using for so you can write these statements wherever, and always do write these type of comments whenever you're defining. For example here I'll say JS I is equal to 10, I'll say this is declared, right, for operators execution. For example, I'm just taking some I'm writing some part here so that I know when I'm actually using this I, right, some other person comes and maintains my program, he understands why I've defined I. So two ways we use comments: one to actually make use of actual comments so that we're actually explaining the piece of code, and second to make the code dead. Anyways, even these are dead code, but this is a useful dead code. But these are unused dead code, which it unnecessarily we have defined. Right, as much as possible, try to make right, try to avoid using dead codes. Fine. So that's your comments you have. So any questions till now, guys? Perfect. So now let's go to the next one, which is control statements. Very important, right? One we have, right, control statements. Now, what are control statements? So control statements are the one which, see, till now whatever we have seen, right? In JavaScript statement, right, each and every statement we are writing will get executed and it will generate some more, right? Sometimes you may get a requirement, or you may get a situation where you have to skip some piece of code from execution based on some conditions, right? And sometimes you may get a situation where you have to iterate, right, or run the same piece of code multiple times. In that situations we will actually use control statements, right? So there are two subdivisions we have in control statement. One, conditional statements, right? And then you have conditional statements, and then you have looping statements, right? So in conditional statements we have if, else, and switch, right? So we have two conditional statements using which we can decide on um, which piece of code or which statements are required to be executed and which are need to be skipped, right? So that we can actually decide on using if, else, and switch, right? And then we have our looping statements. We have for loop, right? And we have for in loop. So for in loop is same as the for each we normally call C sharp, right, where we can actually iterate through, right? And we have while loop and we have do while. So these are the looping statements we have. So let's start with the first one, conditional statement. So conditional statement, first one is if else. So we have just seen the example of if else here, right? So where I'm actually taking, for example, let me uncomment this. So I'm actually taking multiple if. So the syntax is if you have a conditional slot here. So if this condition is true, then it will actually execute this piece of code, right? If this condition is false, then it will go to else part, right? And in if condition, you can have multiple else as such. So let me create a new HTML file to actually create see the conditional operator. Let me save it. Let's say control statements. So here I'm going to write a script. See, so whatever I'm writing in a script, right, you can always create methods and you can dump all these into methods. Okay, fine. End of the day, the concept is same, right? So now here in this script, so for example, I've defined where I is equal to 10, right? Same stuff. And where, let's say, j. So I'll say if the condition is I, let's say for example greater than 10 or greater than 5 for instance, open and close, simple. So here I will say j as, let's say, some 200, and I'll have something called document dot write of j. So yes, this is a simple if condition you have. I can run this directly and you can see j being 200. So here I'm not writing any else. Yes, you can write only if, and you can actually append with something called else. For example, if it is false, then you can extend it with one else. For example, let's say j is equal to 900 for instance, and let's say, let me just take the value of j here as I less than 5, so that I want to make it false so that it can go to else. So now this is a syntax of if. Right click and run, you'll see I value becomes 900 now, right? So that's how we normally define. So now one if can have only one else, but one if can have multiple else with conditions. For example, here I'm saying else if, let's say for example I is equal to, for example, 20, is one condition. Again, I can have one more else with condition. Let's say I not equal to, for example, 10, and I can have multiple else, and without condition I can have only one else. This is a syntax. I can have multiple else if, any number of else ifs, but finally I can have only one else which concludes a complete if. So if no condition is successful, then the last condition, which is the else, will get executed as such. So here, let's say for example, here I'm taking some 800 also. So here what we have done I less than 5 is not correct. I not equal to 10, for example this one, let's say I'm saying I not equal to 5. So for instance, this gets executes, and that's it. If any condition is passed and it gets executed, then immediately it will come out of your if condition. So when I run this program, you'll see j value as 800 because this condition passed. So if this condition also fails, for instance, right, then it will go to final else. Now this is a syntax of a if statement you have. Fine. So now let's go to the next one, which is switch. Right. Switch is basically used. So in if else, what is happening right here? We can actually define multiple conditions, and what happens? Each and every condition will be executed until one condition is successful, right? And it will execute and it will come out. If it is not successful, then it will execute all and it will end up with else. But in switch statement, what happens is, let me comment this up. Right, switch statement is something which will actually take, right, switch expression. You can give any expression here. For example, I'm going to give I, same expression, and then you have multiple cases. So let's say for example case 1, right? So this is a syntax here. Let's say for example if it is case 1, so maybe I'll say j is equal to 1000, and then you immediately have to write a break. So similarly, you can have multiple cases. Let's say case 5, so j is equal to, for example, 2000, and then you have to write a break. So why do we need this break? If you don't give this break, right, anyways, in other programming languages like .NET, right, if you don't define break, it will give you a design time or development time error. But in JavaScript, it doesn't. Right? If you miss any break, what will happen? It will continue executing other statements too. I'll show you that. Don't worry. So let's say you have case 10, for example. Right? Then let's say j is equal to some 3000, and I'm saying break. Right? And if no case is successful, which means this expression is directly compared with the cases. So the I value, if it is 1, so and so will be executed. I value is same as 5. So it's just direct expression comparison we have, and as soon as it matches, it will not execute each and every case. It will directly go to the case whatever is directly matching. So if no case is mapped, then you can have something called, like else you have in if, you have something called default, right? So default you have, so for default, let's say for example I'm going to give j is equal to some ones, and then let's say break. So this is your complete switch case you have, right? So when I run my program, we'll see you'll get 3000. Why? Because case 10, right, I value is 10, and it will directly map 10 and it will get executed directly to this. So this is how this is actually created, where we are actually taking the value of j, and then we are comparing value of 5, and then we are comparing with the cases, and then it will immediately get, right. So for example, here we are taking some 120 which doesn't match to any case. Then automatically it will go to default and we'll see default will be executed. That's how. So this is how your case will be. So now here, for example, if I have I value 1, for instance, so here you can see case 1, right? So now, anyways, we know that as soon as case 1 is mapped, it will come to this case, execute, and immediately break. A break is a branching statement we have. What happens, this break will break from a current block. That's your break. Current block in the sense, after executing this, it won't continue. It will directly go to break and this will come out of this switch. Because we have already done with this. What if we don't have this break? Let me run this. See, it is giving 2000. Why 2000? Because, see, I value will be matching with 1. It will go to J. It will assign 1000. And as it don't have break, it will continue executing. It will say again J 2000 and then break. We have break. That's why it will break at this point only, right? So that's your right. This is the output if you don't actually give break here. We have seen that if you don't give break, it won't give any error as such, right? We have just noticed it. So it's very important to actually make sure that we are actually providing right break here. So for example, if you don't give break, right, multiple, see, if I don't give break here, if I forget, if I run it, we'll see everywhere it is going and it will execute every condition. So that's why break is very important. And also cases, for example, for multiple cases, if you want to execute, for example, for 1 and 2, if you want to have same piece of code, then you don't have to write multiple cases. You can directly define multiple case directly here, case 2 for instance. Similarly, let's say case 3 for instance. So for all cases, right, if you want to execute the same piece of code, yes, you can define, and one break is enough for all the cases. So matching, it's all about matching. If I give 2 here, it will match here, it will execute and break, simple as that. So let me run it, it will give you 1000. So for multiple cases, we'll have something called defining your steps here. So this is how we define multiple cases at a one stretch. You can define the multiple cases at any point you want. So for example, if you duplicate your case, for example, if I say case 2 again here, right, what will happen? If you give matching value 2, see what happens. When I run this, you'll see whatever is the first instance, whichever it gets, it will pick. So never ever actually duplicate your cases. Okay, it may create confusion again. So this is your switch statement you have. That's your if else and switch, right, where it comes under your conditional statements. Fine. That's your conditional statements. Now moving on to the looping statements, where we have our something called loops, right? So in conditional statements, what we do, we normally write conditional statements, if else or switch, right? So to decide on which piece of code should be executed based on conditions or expression mapping. So sometimes it may come to our requirements that we may have to execute same piece of code for multiple iterations, right? So then we'll actually go for looping statements here. So now let's see the looping statements here. Let's for instance, let's understand the for loop, right? So let me comment this out. Right, so I'm commenting. So now, for instance, let me create for loop here. For example, I want to print, right, a number from 1 to 5, right? So for instance, I have I, right, is equal to 0, right? So what I can do, I can write my document dot write, right? Let's say for example I, right, plus plus for 5 different times. But I can do that, right? So when I'm doing it, so here what happens, it will actually give me the complete um, I'm actually duplicating my code, writing the same piece of code 5 different times, for example. So here I can do that. So for example, when I say I plus plus and all, so when I run this program, when I run this program, right, you will see that it start from 0. Anyways, it is actually giving me the complete set of things here. So, so here what we are doing, we are actually duplicating our effort, right? So instead of doing this, what we can do, we can actually use our looping statements, right? And we can actually create our steps here. So this is one more operator we have called Unary Operator, right? Where we are actually using plus plus, right? So now here, let me show you a simple for loop how we can actually use to generate the same output. So now let me remove this and I'll create for loop. The syntax is for, you have 3 slots in this open and close bracket. In these 3 slots, first slot is to initialize. So for example, I'll say var some k is equal to 0. I'll say k should be less than, let's say for example 5. These are number of iterations, and say k plus plus. This is my simple for loop where I'm taking my iteration variable and I'm moving from 0, or you can move from 1. There is no hard rule as such, right? When I'm moving from 1, I should say k it should be less than or equal to 5, and then k plus plus. For every iteration, yes, first I'll assign 1 to k, and then every iteration I'm incrementing by 1. What will happen? K will increment by 1, and then it will run till k value is 5. As soon as k value will become 6, it will come out of your loop. So here, for example, I'm going to run document dot write uh, k. So k I'll write, and I'll say something called break here. Yeah, right. So I'm giving break so that I can print all the numbers line by line. So when I run it, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's your looping statement. Your for loop where we're actually creating the complete set of loops here, right? So here, so for example, if you want to change, if you want to change the way you're printing, for example, if you want to reverse it, right? Reverse meaning if you want to print from a reverse way, right? You can always do that. What you can do, you can actually go, let's say for example, I want to take the same loop, but let's say for example I'm going to give k value as 5, and let's say I want to print till k is greater than or equal to 1, and let's say I'm going to give k minus 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 minus, meaning I'm starting from 5, and every loop is done, I'll say k minus 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 will decrement my value of k by 1, plus plus will increment my value of k by 1 again. So now when I run it, you'll see, for example, here I am going to take some simple script, right? This script, so document dot write of, for example, I'm going to take a simple separator kind of. So when I run this, you'll see I'm printing 1 to 5, and again I'm printing from anyways from k value so and so forth, right? So the every iteration, whenever I'm actually performing, for every iteration my condition and increment or decrement will be executed so that, right, it will actually start executing my, that's how it is, right? So here, whenever you want to place, for example, any point of time, for example, if you want to debug, right, you can directly place something called a keyword called debugger. Now when I run this program, you will see immediately it'll ask you to whether you want to debug with which, based on based on the editor you're actually using. It'll ask, as I'm using my Visual Studio, it's asking me which one. I'll select my same HTML file to debug. So called as, right. So I'm gonna use my Visual Studio debugger here, right. Now you can see it will come to debugging here. So when I move on, press F10, similar way, it will go to my values here, you can see. So K, you can see here, K value become 1, the condition will be checked, whether it is true or false. It is true, then my document dot write. We'll see, document dot write, it will be printed anyways, right? So here, if you open up this browser, it will go again, print the value. Now your K value is 3, and again K value is 4 again, and again you can see K value became 5, now it becomes 6, and then it will come out. Similarly you have here, so initially K value become again 5, right? Now here you can see the beauty here is it will check whether K value is greater than 1 or not. As it is greater than, it will go, it will print 5. Similarly it will go and it will decrement. You can see K values become 3, and then K value becomes 2 because we are using K minus minus. So complete F10. If you're done with this, press F5 and your debug. So you can see the values will be printed. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's how your, so this is what we have for. So if you're done with debugging, always do remember to remove it or comment it. Okay, debugger will always place your code in debugging mode, and even if any client is using, right, it will again step back to debugging mode again. Yeah, so that's how we normally debug here. Anyways, we'll understand more details about debugging. So this is our for loop we have. Right. Similarly, we have branching statements here. Now, what are branching statements? So, for example, let me just comment this out. You've understood this part. So, when I run this program, you will see 1 to 5. So, branching statements. So, we have understood one branching statement called break. What does break do? Break will actually break this current block and it will come out. So, similarly, here we can also do. So, for example, here I'm saying if condition K is equal to 3, for instance, then I'll say break, meaning, so if in this iteration, anytime if K value becomes 3, then I don't want to continue this loop. I want to come out. Then you can use break here. So if you see here, you will see 1, 2, right? K value until it is 1 and 2, it is perfect. As soon as K value become 3, what I'm doing, I'm actually breaking it. So it will come out of my loop. So this is your first branching statement, break, very important one. Second, you have something called, see here in if condition, if you have only one statement, right, you don't have to give your braces actually. That's why I'm giving, right? That's why I'm actually mentioning direct statement. If you have multiple statements, then yes, you should give your braces. But if you have only one statement in your, after your if condition is there, then you don't need your braces. Now the next one is something called continue. What is continue? Continue meaning whenever you are in a loop, right? And when I say continue, it immediately ends up that specific iteration, and it'll ask to move to next iteration as such. So here we are saying whenever K value is 3, don't worry, don't have to go and print, directly go to the next condition, next iteration. So when I run my program, you will see 1, 2, and when it comes to 3, I'm skipping it, right? I'm skipping this iteration. So 3 will not be printed, and then it will continue to 4 and 5. This is your 1, 2, 3 will be skipped, and it will go to 4. Simple as that. This is your conditional. That's how it is actually created it from. Fine. So this is what we have for something called for loop. Fine. So um, I hope we are on time now. So for today, let's wind up till here. So tomorrow we're gonna see for in, while, and do while. Right. Very interesting loops again. Right. We'll see the patterns how it actually behaves as such, and then we'll see. Right. And also tomorrow we're gonna see very important topics: error handling and arrays. Very interesting topics as such, right? And how it actually works and all will say, right? So this is what we have for today, guys. Thanks for joining.